Hey guys, I'm Clarke, and today I'm having a look at the Origin Effects Deluxe 55 Tweed recreation. Now, this pedal is designed to be used in two ways, and I'm going to explore both. The primary way it's designed is to be used essentially as an amp, so you run it into a clean power amp and a guitar cabinet, or in my case, just a speaker IR impulse response, and then also you can use it into the front of a normal amp. But first, let's see how it works as a standalone unit, just straight into an IR. So the controls are mostly self-explanatory. We've got a tone, a drive, and a volume. I don't think I really need to explain those ones. We've also got this switch here, this bottom switch, that goes with this bottom left knob, which is called post EQ. This is for when you're running it into the front of another amp instead of an impulse response, so we'll come on to that in a bit. And then we've also got two different preamp valve models. So we're currently on the 12AY7, which is the standard for these amps. But a common mod was to put 12AX7s in. Bit more thickness, bit more gain, and just some other tone options. So, starting off, here is the clean tone, which in this case is just an impulse response. Most uninspiring guitar sound known to man. And here is the Deluxe 55. Okay, start off with, let's see what kind of gain ranges we're getting here. So obviously I've got the gain at 12 o'clock at the moment, so let's see what happens if we wind that down a bit. So not crystal clean, you kind of get this little bit of hair to the sound. But then if you pick gently, you can get a pretty clean sound, but because it has that bit of hair, it just adds a bit of thickness to it. Okay, going the other way. Woo! So despite the fact at the top of the video I said that the tone, volume, and drive are pretty self-explanatory, actually there's something quite cool that happens with this drive knob. It's not just upping the gain, it's upping the gain in obviously a manner that you'd expect from an amp. And an amp that's struggling, and this is what people love about the Tweed sounds so much, is that kind of the amp's about to explode kind of sound. So it's not just getting gainier, it's getting denser and it's getting more compressed. So you can hear, when I dig in, you can hear it sort of ducking the volume a little bit. And then it opens up afterwards. You're getting quite a compressed sound out of this, but it's not massively noisy, and that's always the problem I have with stacking a compressor with an overdrive. It's mostly the low notes that you can really hear it, and you really hear the amp struggling. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing obviously depends on your taste, but that is the classic Tweed sound. kind of like a perfect hybrid between fuzz and overdrive, and by manipulating that drive knob, it suddenly goes fuzzy when you get past about 3 o'clock. So So about there is that fuzz element, which is just kind of inherent of the Tweed sounds, but I wouldn't call that a fuzz tone. I'd still call that overdrive, but you can just hear that compressed fuzz sound coming in. Let's dime it, see what happens. When you get up to this high level of gain on this pedal, you get quite an unpredictable thing, which is actually kind of refreshing because so many pedals now are so predictable. The circuits have been tweaked and tweaked and tweaked until they're spot on. So everything does exactly what you think it's going to do. It is inherently predictable, which can be extremely useful, and it's kind of why we've gone that way, is that if you want to get a sound, it's really easy to dial in. But back in the day, well, I guess 1955, when the amp this was based on was made, your options were a lot more limited, and you kind of worked with what tools you had, and that's when people discovered that if you crank these amps, you get this really cool sound. But it's also a little bit unpredictable, and what I like is that this isn't just an overdrive that sounds like a Tweed. It really replicates all the aspects of the Tweed amp, including that inherent unpredictability of each time you play something, it's going to come out slightly different, which just makes it a bit more organic. But if you want that predictability back, we can dial the gain a little bit back. And I guess you get back into the realms of what the amp was actually designed to do before us guitarists came along and said, what happens if you dime it? Before I get on to the next part of the video, I just wanted to remind you guys that when I reach 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to be giving away this signed fuzz pedal that was used on the recording of the last Brave Rival album. So if you like gear, lessons, and other guitar-related videos, make sure you subscribe to be in with a chance of winning. Okay, I now want to see what the difference is between the AYX7 that we're on now and the AX7 that is a common mod for these amps. So let me just find a nice setting that I enjoy. To be honest, that sounds great. So let's see what happens if I flip that switch. So I'd say it's thicker for sure, it's more gainy for sure, but I'd also say there's a bit of a level bump, it's a little bit louder. To me, this setting has a lot more life, and I can't say I've ever played a real 55 Tweed amp, but if it really responds like that, which I assume it does, I can see why it's a common mod. Suddenly, it just feels like it has more life. Okay, again, let's see what the gain range is. doing the same thing where you can hear the amp starting to really struggle when you get up to that top gain level. Okay, let's dial back the gain to a more sensible level again, and let's explore this tone control. Okay, so I love that Origin actually provides some recommended settings, so I thought we might as well try those out. So I've got two options here. I've got Bright Crunch and Full Meltdown. Okay, this is what they've labelled Bright Crunch. The only change I've made is to lower the level, because otherwise it will clip going into my interface. Really nice sound, that. It's a bit more than crunch, I'd say, but that might be because I'm using humbuckers. If I just put this onto a chord split. Yeah, it's more crunch, I'd say. Put back on humbuckers for now, though. Okay, we've got to do it. Full Meltdown. So this is the textbook amp about to explode tone, they say. I mean, that is a great sound. But it's still super quiet. I can't hear any hits at all. Okay, I've now moved over to a model of a Fender Twin Reverb. Sounds like this. And let's see how this pedal works into the front of an amp. So if I turn it on, it initially sounds a bit weedy and thin, and that's because it is trying to do the job of the amp. So we now need to tell it we're not doing that. So we've got two modes for the post EQ. We've got 1 and 2. 1 is designed to run into the front of a Fender amp. They describe it as a black panel amp, so I'm imagining a Twin Reverb will fall into that category. And number 2 is to go into a Marshall style amp. So let's obviously start with the Fender one, since that's what we are running to. Now immediately the thickness has come back, but we're still quite muffled. So we can now tweak the post EQ, which works backwards. So the more you turn it up, the more low end and less high end you get, and vice versa, to get where we want. So the way I'm going to test this is by using the same recommended settings. Now I really enjoyed both, actually. So let's start with the Bright Crunch. So there's a lot of low end there, so let's dial some of that out. Still has that same character even into the front of an amp. So let's try the Full Meltdown setting. So I wouldn't say it's collapsing as much as it was when I had it running directly to an IR, which I think is going to be better for me if you want that collapsing sound where you can really hear the compression. It goes thin when it collapses. Then you probably want to run this direct into an IR. But I think, for me at least, running it into an amp sounds better. Oh, I need to fit another overdrive on my pedal board, don't I? Okay, I was going to stop the video after trying it into the Fender style amp, but I decided this has a mode for trying it into a Marshall, so let's do it, why not? So I've now got a Plexi model running. So I'll use the same settings I just finished using. I really like that tone. So let's try it on post EQ 2. Let's see what happens. So again, I'd like some more brightness. Okay, so what do I like? Well, I like the whole vibe of this pedal, to be honest. I think it's a really cool idea, taking the idea of a Tweed style overdrive, which obviously has been done before, but taking it further. So really emulating an amp properly so you get all the characteristics, including the nasty ones. Because let's be honest, if you're cranking an amp to the point where it is collapsing, you don't want it to sound pretty. You want it to sound nasty, and I think they've done a really good job of capturing that sound. I really like that they've considered the fact that this is possibly going to be used direct into an IR or in front of an amp. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, that's really cool that they've made an amp in a box pedal, but it's only for IRs. It's not for going in front of an amp like I do. Nope. Turns out they'd thought of that, and they've made it really, really simple. A switch and a single knob. Done. Also, obviously, this is modeling technology, which I know a lot of people turn their nose up at. A lot of people really don't like it. They want it to be pure analog. And the good news is, this isn't digital modeling. This is purely analog modeling. This is all normal analog circuitry. And to be able to capture that amp's tone without using digital modeling is really quite impressive. And I love that they've done it in the analog domain. As with all Origin stuff, it's built like an absolute tank. If you've ever picked up an Origin pedal, you'll know what I mean. They feel really, really heavy. Feels reassuringly expensive, as I love to say. So there are no inherent issues with this pedal. All I want to draw attention to is things that if you're looking to buy it, maybe you should be aware of. So for example, this kind of high-end overdrive pedal commonly comes with MIDI. I assume due to their analog preference, this has no MIDI. It is just what you see is what you get. For me, I like that, but if you're someone that wants to be able to have all the 128 presets set up on a MIDI device, this isn't the pedal for you. The only other thing I would say is that there is, of course, a limitation to that post EQ in how much it can do to shape the tone going into an amp, because whatever amp you have is always going to shape the tone. It's not going to be able to completely eradicate all tones from the Marshall or the Fender, whatever you're putting into it. That said, it was able to adapt really well to that Fender, and the Marshall that it chose, it did a pretty good job. I don't think it got quite as close. That's not me saying that it doesn't work as well into a Marshall. It didn't work as well for me into that Marshall tone that I picked. All I'm saying is that it's always worth being aware that the other gear you're using this with is always going to have an impact. And while they've done a brilliant job at making it adaptable to fit in with a rig, there are always going to be limitations to that. So there you have it. The Deluxe 55 from Origin Effects. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon ticked to be notified of new videos. Have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time.